Welcome to how to sew your point shoes. You need your point shoes, elastic, ribbon, a sewing kit, scissors, an optional thimble, and a lighter. The first thing you need to do is to cut your ribbon into quarters, 4 equal pieces. You can do this by folding it in half and half again, and then cut one side, and then cut the other side. You'll now have 4 equal pieces to sew onto 2 per each shoe. And you're going to want to burn the edge of each that you've cut to make sure it does not fray. Now that you have those 4 equal pieces with the edges burned to avoid that fraying, you can set those aside. We also need to prep our elastic. I'm going to be showing with the invisible type of elastic, which is a little bit more difficult to sew. So I usually recommend starting with regular elastic, which you will cut to the length that you need for your ankle. Everyone is different. Next, we're going to prep our sewing needle with our thread. This is waxed thread, nice and thick. It will not snap like regular thread. And the needle, these needles are nice and thick. You can see it has a nice sized eye of the needle to poke your thread through. I like to thread a double amount on the needle. So you're going to put one end of the thread through the needle and then pull it to make a double amount, and then cut the end and tie those 2 ends together. Now, the way I always learned to tie a knot was to wrap the 2 pieces of thread around my finger and then twirl the end a few times and then pull it tight. And poof, it made a knot. But you can also just tie it the normal way. All right, now that you have your needle threaded, grab your pre-cut elastic. When it's in the invisible type, I like to fold it so that it has a little bit more to sew through to attach to the shoe. I like to attach it right by the back seam, right behind there, so that it's right by the back of your heel on either side. So start by placing it right by that back seam, grab your needle, and then I like to sew just through the inside lining to go through to the elastic. Now that way your stitches will not be seen from the outside of the shoe, except for the few stitches that we're going to put around the drawstring casing. Now, when you're going around the drawstring casing, so you don't go through the drawstring, which you don't want to do, you're going to go through at the top of the drawstring casing, right there through the elastic, and then at the bottom of the drawstring casing, below the drawstring, you're going to poke back through to sew through the other side. And then I like to repeat that a few times, usually about 4, maybe 5 if I want it extra secure, moving across the piece of elastic 1 stitch at a time. So now you can see I've gone through a little bit further, and I'm going to make another vertical stitch down at the bottom of the drawstring casing and then pull it through the other side. So now there's going to be 2 vertical stitches on the other side. And then now when we flip back around, we're going to make a 3rd stitch. So you can see the stitches just a little bit, but they're not super obvious from far away. You won't see them from stage, maybe not even from across a classroom. So I think it's okay to just have those stitches. This way it really connects the shoe to you all the way to the top of that drawstring casing. So now to continue sewing that piece of elastic on, I like to do a whip stitch. So I'm just going around the edge of the elastic. You could also do a running stitch where you go up and down through, but this is a whip stitch where I'm going around and around that side. Now sometimes the thread does get a little bit caught, so you can see I'm just detangling it, and then I'll pull it tight again so it's smooth. Just easy fix. And then this way I make a perimeter around the piece of elastic all the way down across the bottom and around the top. And this way it really does not come out. I've never had an elastic or ribbon pop off this way. Now I feel if you do just a few stitches across the top, I don't always think that's enough. I really think if you do extra stitches all the way around, that's the way to go. Sometimes what I like to do is flip the heel inside out so I can see the stitches a little bit easier than if they're still flipped inside the shoe. You might have a little easier access to the inside lining, still being careful to just sew through only that inside lining and not all the way through the satin on the outside. Now, sometimes as you're poking through, if you then feel like you've poked too far, you can check on the other side. See how I've sewn through the outside? Just pull it back out. Don't continue that stitch. Try again, just picking that inside lining up. Now I've checked and no more needle is showing on the other side, so I can continue with that stitch. And when you finally reached the end of your stitches where you started, you're going to wrap your thread. I like to do 3 wraps. So I wrap 1, 2, 3 times, and then pull it tight flush to the elastic, and then pull. Again, this is going to create a knot. So holding it tight, pulling it tight, and then you've got your knot, and then I add 2 extra stitches just for good luck in case that knot doesn't want to stay. These extra stitches just ensure that that knot isn't going to go anywhere. And then you can grab your scissors, cut the thread pretty close, as close as you can without cutting anything you're not supposed to. And then congrats, you've sewn on 1 piece of elastic. All right, so now we have the joy of repeating that on the other side. So again, you get to fold the piece of elastic if it's the invisible kind. If it's the regular kind, I don't fold it. We don't need to add any extra bulk. Just having a small section, usually about the tip of your thumb, about an inch, maybe even half an inch, down into the shoe so that it has security going down in there. It also tends to help hold the whole shoe to you again. That can be helpful for if you have a disappearing heel. You want to have a lot more connection with the back of that shoe to really pull it up at the back of your heel and on to your foot. So again, we're sewing. It's the same process. We just did it, so you're just going to do it again. Going through and around that drawstring casing. Again, going at the top of the drawstring casing, but not through it. We don't want to sew through the drawstring, otherwise it may get stuck and it may snap. And once that drawstring snaps inside the casing, you can't fix that without opening up the shoe, and we have a special tool where we can fix it. So if that ever happens to you, let us know. Now, you do see I have speeded up this part just a little bit, just for brevity for this video, but if you do need to rewatch the first part to follow along, it's the same process. Again, that whip stitch around in that perimeter, and then tying it off with those 3 wraparounds of the needle, and then pull it tight and through. So, if you can sew this quickly, great. Otherwise, pause the video if you need a second to catch up with your stitches. Remember, take your time. Better to do it well than miss a stitch. Okay, we did it. Yes, elastic on. All right, so now rethread your needle and we'll do that same process with the ribbon. So with the ribbon, I like to fold it twice, just so that the stitches have a little bit more material to grip, because the ribbon is a little bit daintier of a fabric. So then we're going to put it at the side seam. Now, depending on your arch, you may want to put it right behind the side seam, straddling the side seam in the middle, or right in front of it, but not usually in front of it. That might be too far forward. I would do right on top or right behind it, a little closer to the heel, but not too close to the heel. Anyways, you can see we're starting again with going around that drawstring casing. So we are again going at the top, down through the bottom of that drawstring casing, and then back through the other side to make that vertical stitch around that casing, not through the casing. And again, 4 or 5 times should do it. Okay, and we're again going in with that whip stitch around in the perimeter around the ribbon as well. Again, we want it to stay on. We don't want it to come out. Going just through that inside lining. You can kind of feel for just the lining, and if you've poked through all the way, you can start again. You can see I go a little carefully. I kind of feel for it with the tip of the needle, kind of just plucking at that inside lining. Kind of have to feel for it. It's a little hard to explain and see in a video, but it just takes practice when you've sewn as many shoes as I have. And again, you can see sometimes the thread gets a little bit stuck. Just give it a little pull and continue your stitches all the way around. All right, so again, when we get to that final stitch, we take our thread, wrap it once, twice, 3rd time's the charm, pull it back, and then hold that thread in place. It's very important to hold it so that it pulls tight together. Sometimes I give it a pull in another direction. Sometimes I give one piece of thread on one side a pull, and then the other side a pull, just to keep it really tight. And then add those 2 extra stitches for good luck, so that that stitch isn't going anywhere. And cut. And you've got your piece of ribbon on. Yay! And then repeat on the other side. Again, I'm going to speed it up a little bit, so if you need to, you can either pause to take your time or rewatch that first section again, go back and follow along. But that's about it. We're almost done. So once you have both sides of those ribbons on, both pieces of elastic, the only thing you gotta do is the other shoe. And poof, you did it. Feel free to watch it again for that second shoe and reach out to us if you have any questions. But you've got your ribbon elastic on, you're ready to dance. Yay! Bye!